everyone, author Rhyelle here, and I'm back again with the second part of drawing the characters for my newest book series, Asphariens, Guardians of the Elements. This is what we drew in the last part, so make sure you guys go and check that out so you can stay up to date. So first of all, before I get into drawing the characters, I had to look for my references. So this time I kind of wanted to draw the trio of closest friends in Asphariens, which if you already know or if you don't know is Rhyelle, Ahki, and Kierah. And I kind of wanted to draw them in like a carefree position where they're all like posing for a picture or just having good times together. This is the picture I decided to base off. So I'm first starting off by drawing the three circles to represent the head. The top is going to be Kierah, the bottom, the last one is going to be Ahki, and the middle one is going to be Rhyelle. So as you can see, we're also back to landscape mode because this time I didn't forget that I was posting this on YouTube. So it's going to look definitely a bit more better than it did last time. So as always, before I get in depth about what part I'm drawing, I'm first going to start off by telling you guys what my newest book, Asphariens, Guardians of the Elements, is about. So if you tune in at last part, you'll probably already know what it is, but just in case you don't know, Asphariens, Guardians of the Elements is a story that revolves around the main character, Rhyelle, and a few of the friends that she meets along her journey to find the 13 elemental crystals in order to save everyone from these evil or strange monsters known as the Aurelias. So the friends that I'm drawing, Rhyelle, Ahki, and Kierah, are, I'm going to say, the closest friends in the bunch. Of course, you also have Willow and Evan, but I'll get to that in another video. So Rhyelle first met Ahki and Kierah when she was studying at the School of Asphariens, which is a high school that focuses on developing elemental powers to their strongest form. So it's a very prestigious school. Anyone can get in as long as you pass the exam and you prove that you are either smart intellectually or with your elemental powers. So like I said, she first met them in one of her classes at the School of Asphariens, specifically their training or fighting class, where they learn how to utilize their abilities and how to fight with their elemental weapons or elementless weapons. So elementless weapons is basically the regular standard weapon you get when you don't have an elemental power. When you do have an elemental power, your weapon will kind of change shape and be infused with that energy. So here is the drawing from the top view. As you can see, I'm currently drawing Kierah's shoulders and trying my best to make sure that it's symmetrical, because I do have a habit of sometimes making the other side longer than the other side. And here we're going back to where I'm drawing Ahki. As you can see, I drew circles on the shoulders because that helps me kind of know where the shoulders are going to be and where I'm supposed to position the elbows and etc. So and now I'm moving on to drawing Kierah's hands. So as you saw from the reference, I'm going to try and attempt to form her hands into a peace sign. I'm not going to say I'm the best at drawing hands. I think it's probably one of the hardest parts of drawing the human body, but I have been practicing a lot, so I think I am still pretty proud with the outcome. Here I'm moving down to drawing Rhyelle's arms and also her hands, which are not exactly going to be in a peace sign. It's more of like jazz hands. So unlike the reference, I'm trying to give everybody a little bit of different personality to their moves and etc. And since we were on the topic of the School of Asphariens and elemental powers a little seconds ago, I thought I should tell you guys what elemental powers do Kierah, Ahki, and Rhyelle have. So Kierah has the elemental power of Earth, which means she can control anything surrounding Earth and plants. For example, she can summon a boulder from the ground, or she can make a tree grow really fast. Whereas Rhyelle actually doesn't have an elemental power, so she got into the School of Asphariens purely by her intelligence. I should also probably mention that in order to get your elemental power, or your elemental power, I should say, starts developing at the age of 14, and that's when you kind of realize what type of elemental power you're going to get and etc. Now, it's not necessarily weird that you don't get your elemental powers if you're 14. That just means that you're a late bloomer, but the majority of the human population on their worlds, LNR, does get their elemental powers at the age of 14. Now, Rhyelle, being 15, is a late bloomer, so she doesn't have her elemental powers yet, as well as Ahki. So once again, that means they both gone to the School of Asphariens purely on their intelligence. But by taking these programs in the School of Asphariens, they hope to quickly learn more about how to utilize their elemental powers and hopefully figure out what elemental powers they'll get sooner rather than later. But unfortunately, due to this adventure of finding those 13 elemental crystals, they might have to wait a little while before they'll be able to finish their education at the School of Asphariens. So I'm going back to coloring in, or I guess I should say drawing in, because I don't really have any colors, but drawing in Kierah's features. As you can see here, she has this jacket. It looks a little bit like a fur print jacket, but I'm trying to make it look more like a camo jacket, which is why there are some areas that are a little darker than others. And I'm also coloring her hair a little bit more lighter than I probably should have, but I didn't really want it to mix in with the jacket to the point where you can't tell the difference. So we're just going to say that Kierah has black hair in this section and not gray. I also decided to give her some sunglasses because the regular outfit that she wears is the camo jacket with a white t-shirt and some jean pants, jean shorts. But I decided to add these extra glasses for a little pop of design. Alright, so while I'm finishing up Kierah's drawing, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about her personality. I already told you guys this in the last part, but just in case you're just tuning in and also to add in some new information, Kierah is more of the hard-headed one in the group. And I don't mean that in the sense of, you know, she's always calculative and whatever. I mean that in the sense that she's very stubborn, she's kind of rude, and I think a little bit more annoying in this volume. I don't really like annoying characters that much, so it might be a bit strange on why I added it in this volume, in the first volume of the book series. But trust, Kierah does end up getting better a little later. I just had to do this to really add more character to her character. You probably understand kind of why she's like this when the second volume comes out. But yeah, she's the stubborn one of the group. She mostly always bickers with one of her closest friends, Ahki, but it doesn't always seem that they're closest friends, but trust me, they are. And now we're moving on to the main character of the story, Rhyelle. Like I said, she's the one who decides to follow Evan and Willow, who are two original Guardians of Elements. We'll get to that later on what they are, in order to find the 13 elemental crystals to save her planet, Eleanor, from monsters. So you can't really see how I'm drawing Rhyelle's face because I'm kind of blocking it. My apologies, but I'm trying to add more of kind features in her face, because when I was drawing her, I kind of made her look a bit more angry or more on the sad side or kind of more on the reserved side. She isn't exactly reserved. Rhyelle's personality is she's, I'm not going to say outgoing, but she does like talking with people. I'd say she's more of an ambivert, and she also does have a lot of trust in herself and a lot of confidence. She has a very strong sense of what's wrong and what's right, and that's kind of what allows her to make the decision to follow Evan and Willow on their journey. So I'm quickly moving on to doing Ahki's face, and kind of making him look a little bit more on the fun side, because Ahki is, I'm going to say, the most fun and bubbliest one in the group. He likes making jokes, especially related to food, since in the first chapters it's already kind of shown a bit that Ahki really likes food, and hey, I mean, I like food too. As regarding to his favorite food, I think somewhere in the second volume in his character sheet that I'm going to be adding, I'm going to be showcasing what his favorite food is, so you guys can tune in for that. And I actually didn't really like how Ahki turned out in this picture, in this drawing. I think in the previous episode where I was drawing him as a chibi, it looked a little bit, it showed more of his personality, and here he kind of looks a bit smug. I did try to fix that later, but it didn't turn out the best, so I'm not really proud of that drawing, but I still think it looks decent to post here on YouTube. So back to what Willow and Evan are, or who they are. They are one of the 2 out of 13 original Guardians of Elements that somehow survived the war, despite it being 500 years prior to Rhyelle's time, where she's now 16 years old. I might have said she was 15 in the last video. I don't exactly remember, but that's a mistake. She is 16, just like Ahki and Kierah, who are also 16 since they're all in the same year. So a mini spoiler alert, Evan and Willow were the ones that kind of recruited Ahki, Kierah, and Rhyelle to help them on their journey to find the 13 elemental crystals. And I'm going to say kind of because Willow was a bit reserved with this. She didn't want to bring in essentially children into their journey, because theoretically speaking, if they somehow survived the Great War that was 500 years ago, they'd be about 500 years old. So they're pretty old, and Evan didn't want them to join at all because he didn't want them to drag him down, and also because deep down he was worried about the safety of these essentially children. So right here, I'm just finishing up Ahki's outfit. I decided to give him a sweater, a sweater t-shirt. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but basically a t-shirt with a hoodie and then a light sweater underneath it. And now I'm just adding up the finishing touches by shading in, not coloring in, but shading in the undershirt that's under his t-shirt hoodie. And just to touch up on why I drew Rhyelle's hair in this way instead of the iron down ponytail that she has in the story or on the front or back cover, the reason I drew it like this is because I wanted to showcase Rhyelle with her natural hair, which is a little bit more curly and more thick compared to when she irons it down. So ta-da, here is the final drawing. I think personally my favorite character that I drew on here is Kierah. I think she turned out really well, and the one that I don't really like the most is Ahki because I feel like I made him look a little bit too smug. But tell me what you guys think in the comments. Who is your favorite character based on these drawings and what I've discussed about in this video? Don't forget to get your copy of Asphariens, and I'll see you all in the next one.